Okay, hello internet. So here I'm going to do part 2 of the BJD Addicts prompt number 4, which was characters and backstories. I apologize that this is so late after posting part 1, but I've been really distracted by titans and swimmers lately. But in this video, I'll talk about my Dalshi Husky, my Let's Luwen, my Fairyland Vampire Elf Wushu, my Soom Shale, and my Let's Wintry 2012. So we'll start with Dr. Brescian. He's my older gentleman. As a character, he's 53 years old and comes from Cambridge, England. He's very quiet and has a hard time opening up to people, but he has managed to get pretty close to the other guys here. In his story in the past, he was married, and this hasn't come out in photo stories yet, not that anyone reads my photo stories, but, so this is kind of a spoiler, but in the past, he was married and then was kind of blackmailed into an affair with his stepson. So he went from being a really relatively normal guy to the emo kid that he is now. And that put a big strain on his marriage, so he and his wife ended up getting divorced. And after the divorce, then the wife found out about the affair with her son, and she kind of went protective mother crazy, and she attacked him. And maybe you can see, but on his arm he has this big scar right here from when his wife hurt him. So he had to flee England, and that's how he ended up in our house, which is only a little bit safer. Oops. Then next, let's see, I'll talk about my fairy. This is Luke, my Let's Luwen. He is a fairy. He doesn't, like my last video, he doesn't have his wings on because they're kind of a pain, but he is a fairy. For our story, I've kind of invented my own fairy lore, and we say his type is a solitary fairy, so he's incapable of really feeling for people or having any empathy at all. So oftentimes he comes off as kind of a bastard, but it's just because he's physically incapable of giving a shit. So he can be really kind of rude and mean, but we deal with it. Let's see. As a fairy, he's kind of young in fairy terms. He's probably a teenager by fairy standards. So his little fairy friends make fun of him for that, and it pisses him off. But overall, he's just really kind of bitchy and wants to sleep with everyone. He's a music fairy, and he has like this special power that he can travel via radio waves. But if he comes out of the waves, he can only go back in the way he came. So his story is that he came out of a radio, and while he was snooping around the house, the radio fell and broke, and it wouldn't turn back on, so he couldn't go back in, so he was stuck here. And then by the time the radio got fixed, he was having a good time annoying everyone, so he just kind of stayed. And we've been trying to convince him to leave ever since. Not really. Next is, oh, my little guy. This is Rook. He's the Fairyland Vampire Elf Wushu. He is wearing a winter sweater, even though it's 100 degrees outside. He is a vampire, and he's a real vampire who dies in the sunlight. He does not sparkle. He's a couple 100 years old, but in our story, he's been asleep for a really, really, really long time, so he doesn't remember anything about his past. So he often comes off as kind of dumb or scared, but it's not that he's stupid, he's been asleep, he doesn't know the world, he doesn't know what's going on. But he does enjoy learning, so maybe someday he'll catch up to the rest of the world. His story is that he was, at some point, locked in a box and thrown into a lake, and he was found by Antonio, and but yet he had been asleep for so long that he forgot everything. He forgot his family, his home, his real name. His whole life has been lost to him, so he's kind of just sticking around here and making a new life for himself. The only hints that technically we have about his past is that when he showed up he was speaking German and he was wearing the uniform of a Teutonic knight. In reality, I know his whole story, but I'm not telling. Let's see who's next. Next is my Soom Shale, whose hair looks really awful today. We apologize. But I had always intended on all of my doll characters to be human, and then I ended up with this slew of fantasy characters, so that's kind of funny to me. But Melee is a demigod, which I guess technically should make him the strongest character in the house, but he actually has ended up kind of acting as more of a pet to Gunther and Antonio from before. Let's see, he, like a pet, he enjoys going for walks and being petted and having his belly rubbed, and he'll sleep at Gunther's feet at night. So he's like a puppy. Let's see, his story, I guess, is that he was kidnapped by pirates, and those pirates stole his voice, so he can't talk. And then Antonio saved him, and Antonio gave him to Gunther to be taken care of. And so Melee feels he owes his life to them, and he can be very protective of them. So while normally he's very quiet because he can't talk, he can also be very cynical, and he gets very frustrated that he can't express himself. But he just wants to talk to people and he can't. Because he is so protective of Gunther and Antonio, if anyone else bothers them, he can get really angry, and he will kick and stab and bite at anyone who bothers them, which is usually Luke. Yeah. So they fight. It's dangerous. And last, but definitely not least, ignore his outfit. It's very cute and ridiculous. But last one is, that we'll talk about today, is Clay. Clay is kind of an exception in that he's not in the doll story I've been kind of playing with. Ooh. He's part of a different story that I had started writing a few years ago, just for fun. And when this head was released, I was so like, oh my god, he looks just like this character I've been writing about. So I really had to have him. So he's not in the photo stories. He's just here for me to look at and admire. And I do take an obnoxious amount of pictures of him, but yeah, he's kind of in his own story. So as a character, he is 16 years old. He's kind of a happy guy. Maybe he's a little bit childish, but he likes anime and manga. I don't know why, and he finds wonder in the whole world around him. But he's also kind of been hurt a lot, and every boyfriend he's ever had has hurt him and left him for something better. So Clay has come to feeling like he's unlovable, or there's something wrong with him. He tries his best to smile despite that, but in the story he's in, at the end, he does reach a breaking point and he ends up killing himself. Poor guy. So, yeah, that's all I'll talk about today. So I think at this point you've met all of my dolls, except that new one, but I'll get to that later. Yeah, so I'll end this here, and thank you for watching. Maybe I'll do more prompts, but again, I've been really distracted and busy, I'll say, lately. So yeah, I'll end this. Thank you. Have a good day. Cheers.